Hello, welcome to Grand Rounds. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. John Klein. We were just speaking about how long Dr. Klein has been here at the university, and he has worn many hats. So he went to medical school at the University of Texas, did his residency at Kansas, and then came to UofL to do his fellowship and has been here ever since. He also has a Ph.D. in microbiology and biochemistry. Since joining the Division of Nephrology, he was, in his previous life, director of the HLA lab and a transplant nephrologist. He went on to become one of our stalwarts at the VA. In 2004, he became the James Graham Brown Endowed Chair of Proteomics. And I think part of that's so interesting is that John recognized that proteomics was a great tool to find the answers to a lot of clinical questions. And the proteomics lab has reinvented itself, gotten new technology every couple of years. So it is a state-of-the-art proteomics lab now. He is, in 2017, he became director of the Clinical and Translational Science Institute. In 2013, he was vice dean for research, and presently he is the interim executive vice president of research and innovation. John has had roles in our national society, the American Society of Nephrology. And you know, a couple of years ago seems so long ago, but John was a big radio personality. He was the Doctor Is In on radio and sports radio. So this was a big deal, guys. He's written over 200 articles. He's mentored many of the people in our division and research. And let's welcome John Klein.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good morning and welcome to Grand Rounds. I'm going to speak to you today about the newest NIH program that has been awarded to the university that's known as the Louisville Clinical and Translational Research Center. But before I do, I listened to that Grand Rounds from a few weeks ago that Steve McClave and Craig McLean did. And I thought in 42 years here, it was one of the best Grand Rounds that I'd ever heard. And so I'm going to try and establish a new tradition today. I'm going to mention a few of my mentors and just a gentle suggestion that for the internal speakers going forward, that you might want to show a picture of the people that really helped your career the most. So on the top left on your screen is a guy named Norton J. Greenberger, but nobody ever called him that. His name was Norty. He was the chairman of internal medicine at Kansas University Medical Center for 29 years. He was a gastroenterologist, but above all, he was an amazing educator. Norty had a near photographic memory, and so he loved to make lists. If you look on eBay, you may see a copy of his book, The Medical Book of Lists. And basically, it's a way to memorize differential diagnosis using a series of memory aids. It's really very, very helpful. But above all, what Norty was a master educator, and all of his residents truthfully worshiped him. He had a personality that was just shining like the sun. The guy on the right is Jared Grantham, the person who first got me interested in nephrology. Jared Grantham was born in Dodge City, Kansas, lived all of his life in small cities in Kansas, small towns. And then in 1950, at the age of 17, contracted polio and suffered from post-polio syndrome the rest of his life. He went into nephrology and became one of the real shining lights in the area of polycystic kidney disease. He had to develop tools for dissecting microscopes because his arms were damaged by the polio. So he invented a whole new series of dissecting microscopes. He truly was an amazing guy. His landmark accomplishment was identifying a possible therapy that then became a definite therapy to delay the progression of polycystic kidney disease. The two people on the bottom you may recognize. On the left is, I think, my research mentor over the last, 40 years. That's Ken McLeish, who's been here longer than I have. Ken is not what you would call a patient mentor, but he's an exceptionally good one. I think probably everything I ever wrote was covered with blue lines, either pencil or electronic by Ken. And then on the right is Eleanor Lederer, now at UT Southwestern Dallas and also the VA in Dallas. Eleanor mentored me in the sense that I watched her as a leader, first as a division chief and then as a departmental chair. And I like to think that I learned a lot from her about dealing with interpersonal relationships. And I think I learned a good bit of patience from her as well. So how did this Louisville Clinical and Translational Research Center happen, and what is it? And I'm going to call it the LCTRC so that this gets done in less than 2 hours. So we have a long history at this university of applying for clinical and translational research programs at the NIH. And the first one is actually a general clinical research center application by Craig McLean. Craig was actually recruited to UofL to do this in 2003. He wrote the grant with a team that included his wife, Marion, Marion is on all of the grants that Craig prepares for programmatic submissions. It was a good grant, got great scores. And then later that year, the NIH decided that they would no longer fund general clinical research centers. So it was all for naught, but not really. 2006, NIH creates a series of programs that are called Clinical and Translational Science Awards, CTSAs. UofL received a planning grant, which was a very optimistic, promising thing. And that was, the PI was Craig. From 2008 to 2011, we applied 4 times for a CTSA. Each time we were led by Craig. But unfortunately, we were the last center in the United States not to get a CTSA. We had a score that was nearly fundable, but it was a real heartbreak, a real tragedy. These are huge grants that in many ways change universities. And so we were not able to do it. From 2019 to 2023, we were excluded from CTR applications. That's a long story I won't get into. It has something to do with those folks about 80 miles east of here. And then the National Institute of General Medical Sciences issued an RFA for what are called CTR, Clinical Translational Research Applications. So we formed a team in the fall of 2023. This time I was the program director in waiting. We formed writing groups. We had a professional grant writing firm. We submitted the application in early November. And then in March of this year, we received an impact score of 22, which is really very, very good. It's outstanding. So we were optimistic that with this time we were going to get over the bar. And here's the email notifying us of our funding. This is a P20 grant. It's a good sized grant. How good sized? Well, we have $11,750,000 over 5 years of NIH funding. UofL, President Schatzel and Dean Bumpus stepped up in a big way and committed $11,100,000 over the next 5 years. And our partners in Norton Healthcare contributed $650,000. Altogether, this is $23.5 million over the next 5 years, which is a substantial amount of money to accomplish a great many things that we've wanted to accomplish for some time. So Craig McLean, if you look back at this, led this effort from 2003 up until about 6 years ago. And in that sense, you can say he's like the father of the country. He's the father of this. So through the miracle of AI, I went ahead and put his face on Gilbert Stewart's picture of George Washington. And he is the father of the LCTRC and still a core leader, as you will see. So what are our missions? We want, first of all, as a vision to build a very high impact clinical translational research program at the university to improve the health of Kentucky communities. That's a very ambitious goal, but truthfully, that's what this center is about. We have to do that. We have to build an integrated clinical and translational research program. We have to promote community participation, true bidirectional research with communities, particularly marginalized communities. We have to develop both the human and the built infrastructure to grow clinical and translational research. Human infrastructure, it's an elegant way of saying that we have to train people who actually do the clinical research, the research coordinators, the people in the community who will be recruiting participants. A wide variety of people have to be trained because we really don't have a deep bench or as deep as we need to get this done. The built infrastructure, well, we'll get into that in a little bit, but there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be upgraded and then advanced here at U of L and also at U of L Health. And then the most important thing for this group today is we have to develop a core of well-trained early stage investigators, clinician investigators. And they have to be capable ultimately of securing funding primarily from the NIH. That's how we'll be judged in 5 years by the NIH, is whether we developed and mentored those individuals. And in order to get renewed for another 5 years, we have to show that we've mentored people who have succeeded at the NIH level. So this is our organizational chart. You can see on your screen, we have 3 healthcare systems that we're affiliated with, really 4. I did not squeeze the VA in there, but U of L Health is a partner, Norton Healthcare through its affiliation with our pediatrics department as a partner. And then we've added Owensboro Health, which is actually a large healthcare system that U of L has history with. We have a couple residency programs there. We have a branch of the nursing school there, or at least a program. I serve as the director. We have an external advisory committee and a steering committee. Steering committee is made up of the other large NIH programs here at the university. So this is a way to bring them together. The deputy program director, if you don't know Xiaopeng Wang, you probably should. Xiaopeng is just a remarkable guy. He, until about 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, was in private practice of anesthesiology at Jewish Hospital. He entered the department as a full-time person. He now is multiple PI on at least 2 NIH R01 grants, in addition to having a heavy clinical load. We have an unusual structure here that I just want to mention. We have actually a management core. We have a chief operating officer who's Chris Cunningham. And then we have a management center, or a CFO, in Dr. In Kim from pediatrics. And then there at the very bottom of the organizational chart, we have the individual cores that I'll go through. We have a health research core, very important, headed by Craig McLean and Matt Cave. Why is it very important? They're one of the major sources of giving money out to the U of L community of scholars. We have a professional development core headed by Max Boyacci from neurosurgery and Ken Palmer. And that was, excuse me, that's an amazing development core. It's put together a large number of mentors. We have money to pay for some of their time in this grant. And then also there's some very unique opportunities I want you to pay attention to that we're going to call President Scholars and Dean Scholars that provide money for people to pursue their research interests. And I'll get into detail in a second. We have a research design core, and that's also our compliance and data analysis core. That's headed by Mai-Yin Kong, who has positions in the Brown Cancer Center as well as over in the School of Public Health. And then probably the most important core, in my opinion, is our community engagement and outreach core headed by Kelly Bullard Dunn and Lucrece Kidd. A major part of this effort is going into communities that have historically not participated in clinical or translational research trials, bringing the trials to them, which is one way of looking at this, but much more importantly is listening to the communities and hearing what their concerns are and then ultimately developing people in the community that we call citizen scientists who will collaborate with U of L faculty members. So here's the administrative core. This is this very nice illustration that our professional grant writers made for us. We think that probably is why we got the grant, or at least a big part of it. But what it really shows is that the different cores are puzzle pieces that pull together things that were not pulled together previously. So at the top, the community, particularly West and South Louisville, and then also rural areas. On the right side, our research institutions. We were always here, but in a sense, we were not connected to those communities the way we should be. And then over on the left, the healthcare systems, all the healthcare systems that we work with. So those four cores, and then the administrative core in the middle, what we like to think is that it pulls all of those different stakeholders together. So most of our effort as clinicians in this department is at U of L health facilities. And let's just say that clinical translational research at U of L Health is not easy at this point in time. So we're going to try to bridge that gap between the university and the healthcare system by beginning a couple things. First is we're creating a new position of a chief scientific officer at U of L Health. That person will have a foot in the university and a foot in the healthcare system, and that's going to be filled by Jacques. We're going to conduct a process analysis of research at U of L Health. In fact, we've done that at least and to a great extent over the last 4 months. And the chief medical officer, Jason Smith, is participating in this very actively. The research office at U of L Health is participating actively. We're trying to find the pain points, the friction points in U of L Health that make it difficult to do clinical and translational research. One of the major pain points, and there are a number, is that we cannot exchange data from the EMRs at U of L Health into systems at the university. We've made a lot of progress to fix that, and I think we're very close to being able to build what are called data warehouses out of our informatics, our EHRs at U of L Health, so that people can do research with simple queries. One of the problems was that actually the security systems at the university were not up to National Institute of Standards standards. And so we've now fixed that with the new CIO. We're also going to provide CTR services to the community medical group. You'll always have to remember that when U of L Health was formed, there were large community groups that were a part of it, and many of them had active research programs. And so it's important to make sure that they have all of the menu of services that we provide to everyone. So let's move on to the health research core. There's Dr. Klein and Dr. Cave who run this core. So the health research core is going to develop and solicit applications for two types of grants. One is pilot grants and the other developmental grant projects to support trainees, early career investigators, as well as established investigators, and then those community or citizen scientists that I mentioned. It's also going to coordinate with the professional development and the community engagement course in the selection of mentors. So they're going to match, hopefully, the best possible mentor for you with you. So what are the pilot and developmental grants? Well, the pilot grants are $75,000 for 1 year. $50,000 is coming from the NIH, $25,000 is coming from the university. It's for early investigators. This is a faculty grant, and it requires external review. And we'll be publishing the solicitation for these in the coming weeks. It's going to be a very legitimate process. In that I say that because it's external review. Politics aren't going to play a part. And then in addition to that, the whole process of applying is going to be very much familiar if you've encountered the NIH forms process. If you haven't, we will walk you through that. But it's going to be, really a very organized, independent, transparent process. Developmental grants are big. That's $125,000 a year, and you can renew that for a second year. Again, it's external review, and we can have an expectation, in fact, we will have an expectation that whoever receives a developmental grant will apply for extramural funding in year 2, and we will help you and mentor you in the process of applying for the funding in the second year. The Professional Development Corps is led by Max Boyacci and Kenneth Palmer, as I said. They really, like all corps, interact with the other corps, but they are essential from the viewpoint, if you look at it from this department's perspective. They are going to assist people who are interested in clinical and translational research and to integrate with the already present departmental efforts and help people move ahead in their careers. It's already begun to grow. We're hiring people. Actually, and I've been here 42 years. I do not have the experience that things go quickly with our HR department when you're trying to hire folks. This time it's gone quickly. And I think some of it is that I've got enough people working on it that we're persistent, we're cooperative, and ultimately we've hired people very rapidly. One of the people, just an example of the people that we've hired, is down at the bottom of this slide. Christy Treitman is a remarkable hire for this program. Christy has a background in what's called instructional design. And so she knows a lot about how you frame things so that they are the most accessible for learners. And she is doing a great deal of work in the Professional Development Corps. We've also, when we wrote the grant, we reached out to the Health Science Center Professional Development Office, Jerry Rabelais and the other folks that you see there, and they are an essential part of this Corps as well. We are going to provide what I hope will be wraparound services for people who desire to become clinician scientists. And this Professional Development Corps is a major part of it. So what are they going to do? They're going to create an entire professional development pathway for early career clinician investigators, but also for students and for clinical and translational research staff. So research staff are an incredibly important part of this. You cannot do clinical and translational research without well-educated and state-of-the-art educated individuals who are in support staff roles as collaborators. And so we will not only be educating the professional learners in the medical sections, but we'll be educating other people as well. We're going to provide mentors for this community-based citizen scientist group. This is a really important thing, and I'm going to talk about that last because I want you to take that away as the end of this talk. We're going to provide funding to create protected time. Now, there used to be this phrase called protected time. Unless you're over the age of, say 55 in academics, you don't know that term. So what that was there was enough surplus revenue in the department that people who were either getting grants or trying to get grants would get months at a time in their laboratories or in their research programs in the hospital to just pursue that. As the healthcare system has become more and more RVU focused, that has crowded out protected time. There were years in the early 2000s when I would have 6 to 7 months of protected time in the laboratory. I had good grants, but even with good grants these days, you cannot maintain your income as a faculty member if you take the protected time. It's very hard to do. We're going to provide protected time not only for faculty members, but for students as well. I want to say that the university, thanks to the president, has committed $3.1 million to what we call our Dean Scholars programs. That's item number 3. Our Dean Scholars are essentially a gap year for medical students to do a full year of research, pays their tuition, pays them a stipend. In the grant, it says generous. I'm not sure how generous it is, to be honest. I just don't know the number, but it pays a stipend. Basically, you can spend a year pursuing research. Now, I have to admit, I'm a little cynical about things in general. And when I first heard this idea from Max and from Kenneth Palmer, I thought, well, who's going to want to do that? Because most of our students are rightfully very concerned about their debt load. They want to get out in the world. They want to start their lives. We presented this idea to a group of students about 8 weeks ago, and the enthusiasm just blew the doors off. In part because the pathway to the most competitive residencies in the match is much better, much easier if you have a research background. That's part of it. But also, I think some of it is that we're just beginning to see students have a greater interest in research. So Dean Scholars, thanks to Dean Bumpus and the president, and then our President's Scholars. Presidential Scholars provides 50% protected time and close mentoring for junior early career faculty members. Now, understand, this isn't just for the Department of Medicine. This is for the entire university. The only prerequisite is that you have to compete and your interest has to be related to clinical or translational research. Well, if people say to me, oh, well, okay, well, that's just going to be the med school. Well, no, it's not. We've got people in biomedical engineering. We've got people in the music school studying music therapy. If one of them wants to come forward and propose a study as to how music therapy affects veterans with PTSD, well, by golly, we're going to listen to them. So this is across the entire university, and Presidential Scholars, 50% protected time and close mentoring. It doesn't provide the funding for your research, but you have to then apply for one of our developmental grants as well. We're setting this up so that you can bundle both applications together so that it's much more efficient. This is externally reviewed by experienced reviewers, and then it goes to the NIH for their final approval. The earliest start date for Presidential Scholars, by the way, is going to be April 1st, 2025, for a variety of logistical reasons. But the Dean Scholars, that'll be rolled out before the end of this calendar year. So the Presidential Scholars, this is kind of a complicated slide. I'll apologize for that, but there's a preparatory year after you're awarded the scholarship. You have to do a health research core pilot project application for that award. So in that preparatory year, you're assembling your mentor team. You're receiving education in CTR disciplines. There are degrees that are available. There are certificates that are available through the School of Public Health. You're going to participate in what we call structured networking. We're going to be bringing together investigators and aspiring investigators across the university. You're going to participate in mock study sections. Study sections, until you encounter them personally, are kind of intimidating. But this is the path to getting funding for your research and your scholarly activity. So we're going to have mock study sections, and we've engaged people who do that. And then we're going to initiate the mentored program. I won't go through the rest of the slide, but eventually what you have to do is submit a research project over in the dark gray on the far right. That's the goal. We can't provide this sort of environment unless the end product is more people submitting more grants, probably NIH, some NSF, and then some to independent foundations like the American Heart. That's at the end of the day, the metric will be judged by. And so we have to have that expectation that people will move in that direction and fulfill it. So what are some of the research opportunities through the professional development course, some of the training opportunities? Well, the first ones we know about, and I have to admit, some of these in the School of Public Health, the new dean, Dr. Cardarelli, is reviving them because they need reviving. But there are certificates and master's programs in public health, and we're going to connect our president's scholars with the biostatistics certificates, the public health and epidemiology, AI in medicine, which we think obviously has a tremendous growth potential, and then health professions education. The other thing we've done is we've paid for what's called the Nature Master Classes. So Nature Journal is a family of some of the best journals in the world. They also offer educational systems through an online portal. And these are professional development courses. They're free to everyone at the University of Louisville, actually, as of August 5th. They're courses in grant writing, scientific writing, data presentation, how the peer review system works, and then setting up a public research profile. I've looked at a couple of the classes. They're actually very accessible and very down to earth and full of good information. So how are we going to build interdisciplinary teams? Well, we've funded and built into the grant workshops and retreats to develop a real purposeful engagement. We're going to develop collaborative networks of people who are interested. I put the word scientists there, but people in general who are interested in seeking K awards, R awards, or F awards. We're going to have mock study sections and peer mentoring of people in your peer group who have been successful already. And then we're going to partner with centers and institutes here at the university to give access to all of you to opportunities that stimulate your innovation and your thinking. Dean Scholars, very important. This is a gap year for medical students in clinical and translation research with an assigned mentor. They're going to complete the certificate in clinical investigational sciences through the School of Public Health. We are paying the tuition. You will be required to defend a research thesis at the end of your training in order to receive a master's. Now, understand, most people who get masters have to go through a whole series of classes, then they have to do their research, then they have to write their thesis. Here, because you've taken the certificate and because you've done the gap year of research, all you really have to do is write the thesis in order to receive a master's degree. It's paying tuition and stipend, as I mentioned previously, and this is targeted at people finishing their third year of medical school with the gap year being between the third and the fourth year. So you're going to get through your first two preclinical or so-called preclinical years. You're going to get through the meat of your third year, and then you're going to take the gap year. This is similar to what our MD PhD students do, and we find that it works very well. This is the research design and compliance and data management core that I want to introduce to you. I have to admit, as a scientist, this is the part where I need the most help. Biostatistics, statistics in general. Other people always did that for me because I couldn't do it. And the same holds true here. If you can't do this and you want to learn about biostatistics and data management, then Dr. Kong and this core is the core for you. So it's going to provide state-of-the-art statistical support to design your studies and then to analyze the data that you accrue. It's going to promote the guidance of the use of the electronic health record and large clinical data sets in your research. This is an area we've really fallen behind in at UofL. There are people doing it, but it is so hard to do it at this university that it's something we've got to catch up on and do quickly. And that's why we've focused on getting data out of Epic, getting data out of Cerner into so-called data warehouses that will be prospective. And ultimately, and I think we're close on this, we will have every patient admitted to a UofL health facility given the opportunity to allow their data to be de-identified in most cases and then put into a data warehouse going forward. As large as UofL Health is, that will put us in a very good position. We're going to provide guidance and resources to enhance the competency of the researchers in conducting human subject research. Really important. This is a flow diagram. I'm not going to go through it except for the first three boxes there. Here's the core on the far left. So they divide into two broad areas: research design and statistics, and then policy compliance and data management. This is a well-staffed organization. If you look at it, at the total number of names, we've got the time purchased, as you say in research. We have the time supported of a large number of people, not full-time, but they are available to do everything from research design to clinical trial design to data analysis to understanding compliance with human research and then electronic health record analysis. This is a really ambitious core, and so far they've just delivered beautifully. Finally, what I like to think of as the most important group, this is Kelly Dunn, who is our Vice Dean for Community Engagement and Outreach, and Lucrease Kidd, who is an Assistant Dean for Research Diversity and also a professor in the Department of Pharmacology. And then they've also begun to add people to their group. There's Dwayne Compton. I think hopefully most people know Dwayne. He's the Chief Diversity Officer. And then Brent Wright. A lot of people don't know Brent Wright because Brent doesn't live in Louisville, but he is the Associate Dean for Rural Health Innovation. And he's absolutely a key player in our relationship with Owensboro Health. And as we move further into the west part of the state in clinical research, Brent is going to be an absolutely essential person. So, what are their goals? Pretty straightforward, but also really hard. They want to promote the understanding of clinical health research needs and disseminate all of the services we provide in this core with targeted communities. Now, what are targeted communities? Well, these are historically marginalized communities. So African-American community, Hispanic communities, poor people in general have very limited access to clinical research opportunities, the opportunity to participate. But more importantly, historically, we've sort of been victims of our own white tower mentality, that we are here in the university and people come to us to participate either in care or in research. The ivory tower doesn't work so well when it comes to marginalized communities, and that in this grant includes rural residents, African Americans, Hispanics, and people who are below the poverty line overall. So we have to have a concerted effort to bring those people into the discussion. It's not enough for us to say, you need to lower your LDL. Here's a new trial that will lower your LDL. Please participate. That's the sort of thing that has led to some real disasters. Everything from the Tuskegee study to the HeLa cell story to a wide variety of missteps on the part of universities and research investigators in general. So we're trying to create this bidirectional dialogue that guides us in planning research studies. So here's some of the jobs of the core, the community engagement and outreach core. We have to identify and train community coordinators. So we actually have funding to pay community coordinators to act as sort of the bridge between the university and their community in the Hispanic, African American, and rural communities. We have to begin to develop the citizen scientists that I keep mentioning. This is going to be, and you think, are they really out there? I've been reading about citizen scientists for years. Are they really there? And it turns out, as you'll see in a second, they're there and they want to participate. So we have to begin to train them in a little bit of how you encounter this university and the various hurdles you have to jump over to get questions answered in a research study. We're going to have community participatory projects that will be funded by the developmental mechanism that I described earlier. So that's going to be when a community scientist sees a problem, wants to study it, they'll be partnered with university mentors, and then we'll provide funding for the research to be done. Now you think, okay, so what's an example of that? Well, if you've been coming to Grand Rounds, you've heard the examples that the people in our hepatology group always talk about, that in the early 1960s, there was a cluster of hemangiosarcoma, I believe it was, cases in people who worked in the rubber industry in Rubbertown. This was not noticed by university faculty. This was noticed by community members and community surgeons who then came to the university and said, we need to explain this. This is a rare tumor. Why is it happening in such relatively large numbers in Louisville? That's really the paradigm right there of what community engaged research is about, is the ability to listen to people, and thank goodness they listened back then, and the ability to listen to people and then partner with them in studying the problem. We're going to offer training and resources to develop investigator competence and research design in the community. So another busy slide. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's really important to look at the arrows across the top. The first thing to do is to inform people and to inform the investigators as to what the process is, and to share information with the community. You've got to consult with the community. You have to meet with them. You have to listen. You have to do that in a humble and accessible way, given the history of medical research in this country. Then you have to participate and initiate new studies. And then you do the community-based research. So all those things on the left are before you ever get to the research. You've got to lay the groundwork. And then ultimately what you end up with is a certain amount of community-driven research. This is the flyer from our first gathering with the community. This was with primarily an African-American group from the West End. We had our first meeting. This was the flyer that was circulated throughout the West End. We used social media. We used old-fashioned paper media. When I saw this, it was going to be on September 11th here over in the CTR building. I thought, this would be great if we got 30 people. I mean, because not only is it hard to come here, we didn't go to the people in the West End. We asked them to come here for the first meeting. Not only is it hard to get here, but you have to understand the historical burden that clinical research has with marginalized communities. And so to overcome that, I thought, well, 30 people, that'll be good. This is the first meeting. We had over 70 people from the community that came. It was a very spirited 2-hour discussion. And let me tell you that these are very honest people. They said what they needed to say, which is trust is earned. This is not something that we give you just reflexively. But we're well on our way. We've had this first meeting. We will have a second meeting shortly. We will have a meeting out in Owensboro in the next few months to begin to engage the community there. We're going to actually hire community coordinators in the Owensboro area so that we have, if you will, boots on the ground in that area. And then we also have a very strong partnership with the chief medical officer at Owensboro Health. So let's sum it up. We're up and running. The different cores, professional development, health research, research design, and the community engagement cores are there to help all of you achieve your clinical translational research goals. The LCTRC has $23.5 million, of which half is being provided as institutional commitment. What that means is that the dean of the medical school, the provost, and the president stepped up and said, we are going to match what the NIH is going to award to you. And I think that's one reason that we actually got this award. And funding opportunities are there for faculty, students, and students are both medical students, nursing students, students of all types that are affiliated with the Department of Medicine. I think this is a remarkable opportunity for not only the Department of Medicine, but the medical school and the university as a whole. And I'm excited about helping people take advantage of that opportunity. Thank you very much. If you have questions, that's my email. Take a picture with your phone if you want. That's my cell phone number. If you want to call me directly, it's right there. The QR code is a feedback page that basically you get to decide if I explain this project decently. But go ahead and scan the QR code and then you can provide feedback. I urge you to scan that QR code because another thing that matters as we go back for our annual reviews for this grant is how many people we engaged with. And so you're helping me if you answer that 4-question survey, which will take you about 30 seconds. So thank you very much. I've left time for questions. Whoops.
I was going to scan the QR code.
Oh, back we go. I can't see up here now.
That's all right. We can get it later. I was just going to scan it.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, just send it.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks, Dr. Cook.
There does seem to be a comment in the chat.
Yeah, Dr. Krish had a, let me see, I'll read that for you real quick. Let's see, Dr. Williams has one too, but Dr. Krish says, congratulations, Dr. Klein and team, and also to Dr. McLean, an excellent overview. Said, wish we had this when I was junior faculty, but excited we have clinical research pathways for learners and specifically junior faculty. A question, will med students from the T35 grant have priority for this grant application? And can a junior faculty member have external mentors if there is national expertise outside of the institution?
Second question about external mentors. I'll have to actually check and see if we're allowed to do that. And I'll get you an answer quickly. There won't be preferential treatment for students in the T35. It is an open, transparent competition.
Okay. And then Dr. Williams' question is, how can our clinical faculty with ideas access our grant writers to help apply for funding?
So you'll notice that I don't mention grant writers in here. There are mentors who can help you write a grant, but that's a heavy lift. You have to have a mentor who's committed. Fortunately, we're paying for some of the mentors, and so that expectation is there. But the other thing we're doing is independent of the LCTRC, over in the research office, we're partnering with Dr. Bumpus to engage an online grant writing tutorial. It's live, it's real people. They are doing essentially presentations, but it's a whole course on how to write a grant. And so that's part of what we're going to be offering here shortly in the university.
Yeah, so my question about one of these slides that you showed, the developmental grant, about 1 year, possible 2 years. I'm not too clear, is it like for any faculty, junior versus senior, and then what's entailed, like, are we looking at some particular type of research in there?
Well, first and foremost, it has to be clinical or translational research because that's what the center is focused on. Most good scientists I know have a clinical or translational basis to what they do. And so you have to emphasize that, but pure basic science, manipulating mitochondria, phage, manipulations, that's probably not going to be competitive. But if it's linked to a human health problem and involves human specimens, then that's a much more competitive position. We are focusing, not to exclusion, but we're focusing on junior people because, let's face it, the clinical scientists, when you look around in this department, which is really the heart of clinical research in this university, we've all got a lot of gray hair. There is not a pipeline of young people. I see one of them in the back. I see Dawn. I can count maybe on one hand or possibly two hands the number of junior people who are pursuing a career in clinical and translational research. So we've got to build that bench and that pipeline, to mix the metaphor. But so we're gonna focus on them, but it is going to be open to all faculty, the developmental awards.
Does it have clinical research in it or just like more basic?
The motto is from music to medicine across the entire university. If you're a scholar and you have creative activity and it is related to clinical and translational research, nursing school, dental school, school of public health, you name it, music school, everyone gets to play.
And I do like all the information you sent. I mean, you showed, but I'm thinking like maybe later on I may be forgetting what you showed. Can we get some access to some of those slides information?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'll put them in a PDF and I'll send them over to Jason.
Can we?
She outranked you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do you know, are the database informatics people open to adding databases? Like the transplant database has always been separate from, Epic or Cerner or whatever.
I think it's a great idea, and just rephrasing it just a little bit is they can work with you to set it up in a way that's, to make up a word, analyzable. Because if it's the same database that I remember, it's not analyzable. You can't write a simple query, but they will work with you to do that.
So first of all, I'd like to say, from one of your mentees, congratulations. This is an incredible feat, and it's such an exciting time for research at the university. So I know there's a lot of support for protected. Incredible. Is there support for? Because that can be an expensive endeavor, especially -80 freezers when they fall apart.
We have one.
The short answer is no.
Okay.
When we first started writing in September of 23, a biobank across UofL Health was going to be a part of this. And what we soon found out was it's just way too expensive. That said, you know very well that biobanks are, I think, something that are very important from my perspective. And we have a number of scattered biobanks. We have the biobanks from the Rubbertown experience going back to the 60s. We have your biobank. The Cancer Center actually has a very robust one. So this is, take off my CTR hat, put on my EVPRI hat. This is something we're focused on, but we have a lot of things we're focused on in that office. But ideally, what I'm looking for are resources so that we can begin to build a biobank. We're going to have some talks next week with the folks over at the Brown Cancer Center, because Biobanks are actually heavily regulated now. You have to have people who have certain credentials. And right now, really good group of people in the cancer center. So we're going to try and build on their experience and their expertise.
And when it comes to, sorry, just more of a comment, when it comes to data management, I've already seen a change as far as assistance. So RedCap is a system of data management that is analyzable, and a lot of groups are moving towards that. And there are a lot of people willing to help now that it's supported here. So early meetings are very positive about really moving into a new phase at the university. So again, thank you. This is, I think, huge, and I'm really excited to be here and see this all take place.
Now, for those of you who are division chiefs, we just heard, this is a retention issue, this grant. It's also a recruitment issue as we go to recruit people. We're going to have resources that only 1 out of every 3 medical schools have a grant like this. We are now in very elite company. It took a lot of people. Thank you for the gratitude, but this is, as the lady says, it takes a village, and this was an enormous effort. A lot of people worked very hard on this, and a lot of people invested money in it, which is gratifying. It means that the people at the highest levels in this university support clinical and translational research. Michelle?
For the medical students on Dean Scholars, for that year of their protected time to do research, are there any research funds that they get, like allotted to support their research for that year? Or?
We're gonna have funds to support their research, but their mentors are gonna have to write developmental or pilot awards with them.
And one more question in the chat from Dr. Calra. And he says, great talk, Dr. Klein. He wants to know, how do junior faculty engage in multi-institute collaboration across UofL and outside, such as other institutions, to engage in CTSA research projects?
Well, you don't have to be a president's scholar to take advantage of this. And so there are going to be a variety of ways that you can access the resources in the CTR. And some of it will be just the matchmaking process of pairing people up with mentors who are serious mentors, not going to just sort of listen to you and then go off somewhere. So I think that's really the entry point. We're still a work in progress. I don't like this metaphor of building the plane while you're flying it, but there's some of that going on. We really got funding only the 3rd week of July. And so the website isn't where it ought to be. The website ultimately will be sort of a single point of access for the university and the general community for clinical and translational research. That's what we're aiming for. Concierge service.
That's all from the chat.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want to add to your collection?
Sure. Diggity.
You get your own bat.
Well, thank you. And I don't have to have it shipped to me.
No.
That's
Take a
great.
picture, Jason.
We
We
will.
have our Twitter account. We'll
Oh,
put it
yeah.
up there.
Can I put that on?
Yeah, I saw that.
He knows how to hold it.
Yeah.